Dean heard the sound just as he passed the narrow hallway by the storage room. A dull, heavy thud, like a body hitting a wall. Then a pause. Then another, sharper this time. Something was wrong. Dean knew backstage sounds like he knew every lyric to That's Amore. But this wasn't right. He slowed his steps, his instincts clawing at him. A voice came next, low, mean, and slurred. The kind of voice that isn't trying to threaten. It and Oppos, as trying to hurt. Dean's hand moved toward the door, fingers hovering over the cold metal handle. Then he heard something that stopped his heart. I don't want any trouble. Just let me go back to my dressing room. It was Sammy. Dean's jaw clenched. That voice, it was his friend's. But it wasn't the Sammy Davis Jr. the world saw on stage. It was smaller, controlled, scared. And what Dean Martin did in the next 2 minutes, without backup, without thinking, wouldn't just save Sammy's life. It would reveal a part of Dean no one had ever seen, not even his closest friends. A part buried so deep, he thought he'd left it behind in the back alleys of Ohio. But Vegas was about to learn. Dean Martin wasn't just a performer. He was something far more dangerous. April 16, 1965. The Riviera Casino glowed like a crown jewel on the Las Vegas Strip. Inside the main showroom, 1,000 people were still clapping as Dean Martin gave a casual wave and slipped off stage, his tuxedo immaculate, his smile effortless. He'd just finished his second set of the night. 45 minutes of swing, sharp wit, and that signature swagger that made it all seem improvised. The audience only saw the glitz. What they didn't see was the world behind the curtain. Backstage was a different Vegas altogether. No velvet seats or champagne bubbles here. Just narrow, concrete hallways painted dull beige, buzzing fluorescent lights, and the lingering haze of cigarette smoke clinging to every inch. The kind of place where dreams took a break and real life crept in. Stagehands rolled gear across the floor. Musicians packed up. Pipes rattled overhead. It was the machine that kept the magic alive, but it was ugly, mechanical, and mostly ignored. Dean moved through it like he had 100 times before, nodding to the lighting guy, stepping past a wheeled piano dolly, half humming the last note of Volare under his breath. Another night, another standing ovation. But even in this well-oiled routine, something tugged at him. A feeling. He couldn't place it yet, but it was coming. Fast. Dean was halfway down the corridor when it happened again. Thud. Not a door. Not dropped equipment. This was heavier. Wetter. The kind of sound that only comes from flesh meeting concrete. He froze. 3 seconds of silence. Then another sound. Muffled. Choked. Almost human. A gasp that never finished. Dean turned his head. To the left, down a short hallway that led to the overflow storage room. He saw it. A thin sliver of light escaping from a door that should have been shut. One that was never used at this hour unless something was wrong. He stepped closer. That's when he heard it. A voice, slurred, mean, riding the edge of violence. You think you're special? You think being Sinatra's pet protects you? Dean's hand landed on the doorknob. His blood ran cold. Not from fear, but memory. That tone, he'd heard it before. Decades ago. In an alley behind a bar. In a voice that only sounded that way after it had already decided to hurt someone. Then came another voice. Quieter. Controlled. But trembling just underneath. I don't want any trouble. Just let me go back to my dressing room. Dean's stomach turned to stone. Sammy. He wasn't supposed to be here. His set had ended 20 minutes ago. He should have been 3 doors down, wiping off sweat and changing clothes. Not stuck behind a half-closed door with that voice pressing down on him. Dean didn't think. He acted, because what he was about to find inside wasn't just a friend in danger. It was a line in the sand, and he was about to step across it. Dean pushed the door open. The smell hit him first. Dust, sweat, something metallic in the air. The room was small, maybe 15 feet across, boxed in by metal shelves stacked with cables, cracked mic stands, and paint-stained crates. A bare bulb swung slightly overhead, casting shadows that moved like threats. Then he saw Sammy. Pinned against the back wall, his white tuxedo shirt soaked with sweat and something darker. One eye already swollen shut. Lip split, bleeding. His hands were up, palms forward. The universal signal of someone trying not to escalate what's already beyond control. 3 men surrounded him. The one in front had Sammy's collar twisted in a meaty fist, pinning him to the concrete. He was big, thick-necked, The kind of man who solved his problems with noise and muscle. His face was flushed with rage, spitting words through gritted teeth. "Nobody wants you here. Not on this stage. Not in this town." Sammy tried to speak, tried to stay calm, but it was like watching a man trapped underwater. The second thug, sleeves rolled and knuckles red, leaned in closer. "You think marrying a white woman makes you one of us?" Dean didn't move. Not yet. His hand still rested on the door handle, body half in shadow. He was watching, calculating, and something inside him started to break. Not just because of the beating, but because it was planned, deliberate. These weren't random drunks. They'd waited, watched, knew when Sammy would be alone. They'd chosen this spot, quiet, hidden, where no one would hear him scream. Dean saw it all, the blood, the hatred, the strategy behind it. And most of all, the fear in Sammy's eyes. He had 3 seconds to decide. Walk away and call for help, or step into that room and remind the world who Dean Martin used to be. They say you can leave your past behind, change your name, polish your image, but some things never really go away. Dean Martin wasn't born on a stage in Vegas. He was born Dino Crocetti in the steel-stained streets of Steubenville, Ohio, a town that didn't offer second chances. His parents were poor Italian immigrants. His father was a barber. Meat was a luxury, school was optional, and respect was earned with fists, not words. Dino didn't grow up crooning love songs. He grew up dodging punches, hauling crates, running booze during Prohibition, and dealing blackjack in smoke-choked back rooms. Before he learned to charm a crowd, he learned how to fight to survive. His knuckles bore scars that tuxedos couldn't hide. He dropped out of school at 16, boxed semi-pro, and once took down a loan shark's enforcer in an alley without breaking a sweat. But that life, that part of him, he buried it, paved over it with swing music, charisma, and the smoothest drunk act in showbiz. Dean Martin was the illusion. Dino Crocetti was the foundation. And as Dean stood there in that storage room, watching his friend tremble under the weight of 3 men's hate, he felt the old self stirring. Quiet, focused, dangerous. He stepped fully into the room. The click of the door latch echoed like a warning shot. The biggest thug turned, eyes narrowing. "This is private business, Mr. Martin. Keep walking." Dean's voice was low, measured. No tension, no fear. Let him go. Laughter, mockery. They didn't know who they were talking to. They only saw the tux, the Hollywood smile, the glass of scotch on stage. They didn't see the kid from Steubenville who'd fought for every inch of dignity he had. They were about to. The thug tightened his grip on Sammy's collar. "This doesn't concern you." Dean's eyes didn't leave his friend. Sammy's face was swelling, his lips still bleeding, but there was something else in his eyes now, a plea. Not for help. For Dean to walk away. To not get hurt. To not get dragged into this. But Dean had already made his decision. "I'm going to say this once," he said calmly. "Let him go. Walk out that door. Or stay and regret it." The one with red knuckles stepped forward, smirking. "What? You gonna sing us to death?" They all laughed. They thought this was still Dean Martin, the Rat Pack crooner, the guy with the lazy grin and whiskey in hand. They didn't know about the alley fights, the broken noses, the brutal precision buried beneath the velvet voice. Dean took 3 slow steps forward, deliberate, silent. The 2 younger men instinctively backed off, but the big one didn't flinch. "You threatening me? You even know who sent us?" Dean's face didn't move. "Don't care. You put hands on my friend. And now, I'm taking them off." Then it happened, so fast it barely registered. 1 second, Dean's right hand was at his side. The next, it locked around the man's wrist, the one holding Sammy, and squeezed. Years of strength from golf swings, boxing rings, and backstage brawls surged through his grip. The man gasped. His fingers sprang open. Sammy dropped free, stumbling sideways. Dean didn't stop. "Then I do this the old way," he said softly. He twisted the man's wrist, a sharp, practiced motion, and dropped him to one knee. Before the thug could scream, Dean's left hand came down on the back of his neck. Crack. Not a punch. A controlled takedown, calculated and merciless. Face to concrete. 1 thug down. The room froze. The 2 remaining men stared. This wasn't Dean Martin. This was Dino, and he wasn't done yet. The big man hit the floor with a dull smack, stunned, dazed, and gasping for air. Dean stood over him, unmoved, like he hadn't even broken a sweat. His eyes shifted to the remaining 2. You want some too? He asked, voice calm, casual, deadly. The one with red knuckles froze. Dean could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. He'd just watched his leader, a man twice Dean's size, get dropped like dead weight in under 3 seconds. That wasn't stage combat. That was experience. Real, hard-earned, street-born power. And the kid knew it. He raised his hands. We're done, he said quickly. We're leaving. Smart move. But the third one, the one who'd been bouncing on the balls of his feet like a caged boxer, wasn't done proving himself. Maybe he thought Dean was lucky. Maybe he thought he'd catch him off guard. He was wrong. He lunged. Wide punch. Sloppy. Emotional. Dean didn't flinch. He shifted his weight, letting the punch slide past his shoulder, then drove his elbow deep into the man's solar plexus. A surgical strike that knocked the wind out of him in one brutal breath. The man collapsed beside his friend, gasping like a fish out of water. Silence. Sammy stood frozen near the door, watching Dean, really watching him. Not the Dean who sang, "That's Amore," or played drunk with charm on stage. This was someone else. Someone older, colder, lethal. Sam, Dean said without turning, eyes still locked on the 3 crumpled men. Go get security. Tell them we've got trash that needs taking out. Sammy hesitated. He looked at the bodies on the floor, then back at Dean. Dean, Later, Dean cut in, gentler now. Just go. I got this. Sammy nodded and moved slowly to the door, like he was seeing a ghost in a tuxedo. He paused with his hand on the handle. Dean, go. Sammy slipped out, and Dean was alone with the wreckage. 3 men, beaten, broken, and suddenly very, very quiet. Dean adjusted his bow tie, straightened his jacket, and when he spoke again, it wasn't a request. It was a verdict. The room was still. The only sound came from the broken breath of 3 men who had thought they ran the show. Not tonight. Dean stepped forward, slow and deliberate, like he was still on stage, but there was no audience here. No spotlight. Just the cold hum of the storage room light and the weight of silence. He looked down at the big man, who was now struggling to lift his head off the floor. Dean placed one polished shoe between the man's shoulder blades. Not hard, just enough to remind him who held the high ground now. Here's what you're gonna do, Dean said, his voice stripped of charm. You're gonna tell whoever sent you that it didn't work. You're gonna tell them that Sammy Davis Jr. is under my protection and Frank's. And if anyone touches him again, they answer to us. He paused. Tell them this kind of thing ends tonight, or it gets very ugly, very fast. The thug wheezed beneath him. Yeah, we hear you. Dean leaned down slightly. Good. Because if I find out you 3, or anyone connected to you, lays a finger on anyone in my crew again, I won't waste time coming back here. His voice dropped to ice. I'll go straight to the source. And what happened here tonight will feel like a warm-up. The 3 men didn't argue. They didn't even look him in the eye. Moments later, the door swung open. Security arrived. 4 men in casino uniforms, wide-eyed at the sight of Dean Martin calmly standing over 3 beaten men. The head guard, Mike, knew Dean from poker nights. One look at the scene, and he knew exactly what had gone down. Mr. Martin, you want to file a report? Dean shook his head. No report. Just get them out. Make sure they know they're not welcome back. Ever. Mike nodded. The men were hauled to their feet, groaning, bleeding, humiliated. As they were dragged toward the exit, the big one looked back over his shoulder. His face was a twisted knot of fear, fury, and something else. Respect. The door closed behind them. And Dean finally let out the breath he'd been holding. His hands were trembling slightly. His wrist ached. His legs felt heavier than they had 10 minutes ago. He wasn't 18 anymore. But tonight, it hadn't mattered. Because tonight, he hadn't been Dean Martin, the performer. He'd been Dino Crocetti, the protector. And the message he delivered. Vegas heard it loud and clear. Dean found Sammy in his dressing room 20 minutes later. He was sitting quietly, holding a bag of ice to his face. The blood had been wiped away, but the damage was still there. The swollen eye, the split lip, the bruises that would bloom deeper by morning. His bow tie lay discarded on the table. His white shirt, stained and torn, looked more like a battlefield uniform than stage wear. Dean stepped in and closed the door behind him. Neither man spoke for a moment. Then Sammy looked up. Hey, he said, voice hoarse. Hey yourself, Dean replied, sinking into the chair across from him. More silence. And then Sammy broke it. I didn't know you could do that. Dean raised an eyebrow. Do what? Fight like that? Move like that? Dean, I've known you 10 years. I've never even seen you throw a punch. Dean looked down at his hands, knuckles still red, one wrist already starting to swell. It's not something I advertise. Where'd you learn it? Dean was quiet. Then finally, Steubenville. Before I was Dean Martin, I was Dino Crocetti, and Dino had to take care of himself. Sammy nodded slowly, his one good eye studying the man in front of him like he was seeing him for the first time. So all this time, the charm, the drunk act, it's not the whole picture. It's part of me, the part one liked better. But the other part, the part that fought tonight, that never left. Sammy tried to smile, winced instead. Dean leaned forward, serious now. Listen, Sam. From now on, you don't go anywhere backstage alone. You go from your dressing room to the stage and back. That's it. You need something? Someone goes with you. Sammy's voice dropped. Dean, I can't live like that. I can't let them win. Dean's tone sharpened. This isn't about winning. This is about keeping you breathing. You're my friend, Sam. My brother. And I swear on everything I've got, I won't let anyone hurt you again. Sammy's eye welled up. He blinked the tears back, tried to speak, but the words caught. Dean stood and crossed the room, resting a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to say anything. Just be careful. Promise me. I promise. They sat there for a long time. Two legends in silence. No stage, no audience. Just scars, bruises, and the unshakable weight of loyalty. Then Sammy said, Dean, what you did tonight, putting yourself between me and them. You didn't have to do that. Dean gave a faint smile. Yeah, I did. Why? Dean paused. Because we're friends. Partly. But also, because it was the right thing to do. And if I'd walked away, if I'd let them finish what they started, I don't think I'd ever be able to look in the mirror again. Sammy exhaled. That's the Steubenville talking. Dean smirked. Maybe, or maybe, that's the best part of both of us. And in that quiet room, without applause, without cameras, a bond was sealed. One that no stage, no contract, and no threat could ever undo. The story got out, of course. It always does in Vegas. By morning, the whispers were everywhere. How Dean Martin had walked into a dark storage room and put 3 men on the floor without breaking a sweat. The numbers grew in the retelling. Some said it was 5 guys. Others swore Dean knocked one through a wall. But the core truth never changed. Dean Martin stood between Sammy Davis Jr. and a beating meant to break him. And he didn't flinch. The casino owners never admitted anything. No formal charges were filed. No public statements were made. But one thing changed overnight. Nobody ever laid a hand on Sammy Davis Jr. again. Not in Vegas. Not backstage. Not anywhere the Rat Pack held court. Some credited Frank Sinatra's power. Some said the times were changing anyway. But the people who were there, who knew, they told it straight. It wasn't policy that protected Sammy. It was Dean. Years later, long after the lights had dimmed and the curtains closed, Sammy sat for an interview. The topic turned to the Rat Pack, the glamour, the fame, the chaos. The interviewer asked him who his best friend was during those years. Sammy didn't hesitate. Dean, he said. Frank was the boss. He made things happen. But Dean was the one who'd die for you. He literally stepped between me and danger without thinking. He proved it. The interviewer leaned in. When did he prove it? Sammy reached up and touched the faint scar on his lip. The one from that night in 1965. Once, he said. Just once. And that was all it took. That's the thing about legends. They don't need to shout. They just step forward when it counts and let the silence that follows do the talking.